So one of the things when I was studying the history of science that really struck me is alchemy, both in terms of the processes and procedures and the fact that it was kind of a prototype to modern chemistry. But I'm really interested in these apparatuses, and I started designing my own alchemical vessels for different processes and procedures that were more conceptual or more emotional or more psychological, right? So there's metaphor here. The piece is called Apparatus for the Distillation of Vague Intuitions. And then there's a subtext here. So there's this big sort of theatrical installation. But when you get close to it, you see that there's words. So it's like a big three-dimensional poem that has to do with error and approximation and accident and mistake and all of those subjective things that artists work with all the time but have kind of gotten written out of the script in the sciences. I got asked to do something about the Hudson River and I thought, oh, boring. You know, so many artists have done things about the Hudson River. But I discovered that very close to the gallery, which was Wave Hill, there is this sugar factory. And there was this dredging of the Hudson River that happened kind of stealth in the middle of the night by the Army Corps of Engineers. And when they dredged out this matter, it was toxic because of a spill from the General Electric plant upriver. And they used that toxic material to remediate or clean up another area in the New York Harbor. So kind of thinking about the movement of tons of matter in space got me thinking about Michael Heiser and earthworks in reverse. And so the way that this kind of benthic mapping happens is just like a computer scanner. There's two scanners on a boat, and using sonar and LiDAR, I think, it scans the bottom of the river. So you're seeing part of the floor of the Hudson River here. These are our two shores, and then this is part of the sediment at the bottom. And so in the gallery, I built this sculpture that there's a hollow form inside, but it's piled with hundreds of pounds of golden yellow sugar. And the reason for the golden yellow is it's that sort of saccharine sweet Hudson River school of painting golden glow. So I got started thinking about our atomic legacy when I moved to New Mexico. I moved to New Mexico in 1980. I'm there one morning drinking coffee, read the Albuquerque Journal, and there's an article about the Church Rock uranium mill spill that happened on Navajo land. And it's the largest spill of radiological materials in the country. It'll probably only be surpassed by Hanford in a few years. But it happened on the Navajo res, and so nobody heard about it. And it happened just a few months after the 3 Mile Island meltdown. And after several months, it wasn't cleaned up. After several months, Navajo women who were herding their sheep across the Rio Puerco River started getting sores on their feet and on their ankles. And then you started seeing birth defects in the next generation of children being born. And then you started seeing rare cancers, brain cancer, cancer of the nervous system, kidney cancer. And there's part of me that just could not tolerate this, that this land could be devastated that way and left behind. Lot of uranium concentration in the Southwest. So I've been focusing a lot of my research on that area and the impact on the indigenous populations there, because with so much radiological toxins in the environment and in the water, it's affecting their genome. And I have a problem with that. So I make art about it. And so these places out west really interest me. This is the Mount Taylor mine. It's sacred land to numerous Pueblo peoples, and lots of uranium mining operations on Mount Taylor. is a video projection on the far wall. You can see it there for the scale of it. It looks like a comet, but actually what you're looking at is a micro photograph of a cell that's in a solution of uranyl acetate, which is uranium, a uranium solution, and you're actually seeing the genetic material being blasted off the cell, off the DNA strands in the cell. And this is research that comes out of Arizona, University of Arizona. Well, this uranium mill, this is the tailings pond that was leaking into the Colorado River for over 20 years. Here's the town of Moab. Arches National Park is right there. In Moab, people would rent rafts and take them out this road and, you know, float down the Colorado River and get irradiated at the same time. So again, a situation that I kind of couldn't tolerate. I went to the public library in Moab. I said, I want information about this uranium mill that you have in your town. And they said, what uranium mill? And I said, well, I saw on the Department of Energy website that there's an archive in the public library. No one could find it. Finally, I got to someone who had been at the library for a long time. They literally handed me a file folder with the printout of the Department of Energy website. What's a subversive way for me to get this information out into the public without being a strident, you know, sign-waving kind of an activist? I want to be more subversive. So you know the national park brochures that you get at every national park? I've designed a series of my own. This one is Atlas Uranium Mill, had them printed, folded them up, put them in the bookstore of Arches National Park. So people would either grab the Arches one or by mistake grab the Atlas Uranium Mill. You know, when I went to the summit meeting, I noticed that all these industry and government people would use the word disposition instead of the word disposal when they were talking about waste. And I thought, God, that's a really interesting thing, disposition. I wonder why they're using disposition. And the definition of disposition is a person's inherent qualities of mind and character. That's the one we're most familiar with. An inclination or a tendency, the action of arranging or ordering people or things in a particular way, moving waste from one place to another. Military preparations, in particular the stationing of troops ready for attack or defense. The action of distributing or transferring property or money to another. The power to deal with something as one pleases. And that's the one that like really drove it home to me as, you know, I was hearing the government and the industry, basically they have the power to do what they please. And there are environmental injustices and economic injustices that are very disturbing to me.